Well, hello. I want to talk about Stalker 2 Heart of Chornobyl. I was excited to play this game because it's been, over a decade since the last entry in the series, and I want to see what they would do after all this time, especially with all the changes they've kind of made to how they developed this game. Particularly, they're not using their own original engine anymore, which had some elements in it that kind of gave the Stalker franchise a unique feel to it, particularly in the way the NPCs function and act. But they're using Unreal Engine 5, and that game engine has some issues, particularly with stuttering and just some of the problems you kind of run into in a lot of games that utilize it. And it's probably going to be a bigger issue in the future given the fact that so many studios are switching from their own engines to Unreal Engine 5. But I won't blame Unreal Engine 5 for the problems this game has in terms of performance, because that's really the thing that I feel is going to make this something that a lot of people might want to avoid, at least for now, especially given the fact that there's also other stuff missing from the game, because I believe in the future they're going to be adding multiplayer, they're going to be adding modding support, they're going to be adding ray tracing as well, which is going to be a rough thing given the fact that just when it comes to purely rasterized stuff, this game is having some problems, because I don't believe there's any ray tracing baked into this game. Like, there are some games, I think, like when Star Wars Outlaws had it baked in, but no, that's something they're going to be adding in the future. So I'm interested to see how that's going to work out given the game's performance currently. But a lot of people are having trouble running this game at a decent frame rate and are particularly running issues in the initial town area. And for me, that was a little bit of an issue, but also there would just be strange areas where my frame rate would drop, and I really couldn't see what the reason for it might be, because these areas were highly populated. It would just be times where I'd run across a particular chunk of grass that would seemingly bring my frame rate down from over 60 down to something just absurd, to where it'd be incredibly noticeable for me. Now, I'll tell you what I was playing this game on. I was playing it at 1440p Epic, and my rig has a Ryzen 9950X and a Radeon 7900 XTX, and I ran this on an M.2 SSD. And my hardware meets the recommendations for running this game in Epic at 4K, but I'm running at 1440p, but I still ran into those issues. And I even tried some things at some lower settings, but there were still problems here and there. Overall, the game wasn't unplayable, and for the most part, it was smooth. Just, I had those incidents. But you have to consider this is also with upscaling. I also use frame generation, and those are something you're going to have on, I feel. And the developers know that as well. That's why in the requirements they put out for playing the game, all the tests they did involved frame generation, upscaling, even at the lowest possible resolution, lowest possible settings. And this is something I've been seeing a lot of lately, where you're just kind of expected to have these things on, and sure, but I've seen games have it for running the game at 30 frames per second at 1080p low, and that's just strange. I don't even think the companies that develop these software, whether we're talking about Nvidia or AMD, recommend you to be utilizing that software, utilizing those features, if your game isn't at a least solid 60, because there's usually some problems when they're actually trying to like upscale or generate the frames, and there's some type of problem, and you're just going to get a terrible experience in terms of just how the game looks, and you're going to get stuttering, and it just seems like this is something that keeps going on and on and on, and it's probably just going to get worse. And that's why I'm very worried when this game gets ray tracing, because it's probably going to be terrible. I mean, we're getting new hardware in terms of GPUs coming up, but that still might be an issue. But the real problem was not even performance. It was some immersion breaking glitches and bugs that would happen at inopportune times, such as in the middle of a story sequence, where it kind of just takes you out of things, because the story is relatively serious. So if there's an interesting moment or exciting moment or a compelling moment happening on the screen, and suddenly somebody's going through the floor a little bit, I'm like, okay, well thanks for that. Really just took me out of the whole scene. And it's kind of fucking annoying. But other things I run into besides people sinking through the floor would be just randomly the wall textures in places would just start flashing for no reason, like they weren't loading properly. They would just go white, or they just be like just going all over. It seemed to be one particular like blue wall texture that you would see in some bases and some buildings, and for some reason it just loved messing up. And then this another strange thing, my weapons would disappear, or really not disappear, they get switched out with another weapon that I didn't even have, I didn't even own it, and suddenly that weapon would be in a slot. One time it switched out a shotgun I had, a fully upgraded shotgun, with its just basic version, and I thought for a second, oh my god, it downgraded my weapon, but no, my gun gun was just in the bag, and I just got a free gun. It was in terrible condition though, so I guess I don't really know what happened. And it also did it one time with just another weapon that didn't make any sense. I had never even picked one of them up. I think it was like a rifle, a particular rifle. I don't remember their name, but it just teleported into one of my slots. Along with that, the opacity of the UI would just go down for no reason, and it'd be almost invisible. And I'd have to go into the menu and then just exit out of it for it to come back up. Cursors would disappear when I was on the map. Jesus, I just stuttered there. I'm really, I guess I'm turning into those wall textures, I suppose. Stuttering all over the place. I apologize for that. But yeah, it was an issue. And every time you load up this game, it piles all the shaders. And one time, it just freaked out on me for no fucking reason. Like, I was looking at the other side of my screen where it had stuff up. For some reason, this game hopped up to like 75% CPU utilization. My whole fucking system just turned into a jet engine. And it was just blowing, trying to keep that thing cool. All cores were working overload. And I was just like, you know what? I'm just exiting out of that. I don't know what's going on, but I'm not about to... And I saw it going up a little bit by little, even at that point. And I was like, okay, let's not blow up my fucking computer. And well, yeah, that was some of the fucking jank I encountered. But despite that, I enjoyed the game. I really, really did. It was a fun experience. The biggest selling point, the combat. The combat always keeps you on your toes. You can easily slip up in any engagement if you're not careful, because you're not just worrying about the enemies, which there always usually more enemies than there are, well, you, of course. And they're not dumb. They're not as smart as I would like them to be, especially because they are working on transporting some of those elements from the original Stalker games into this game, given the fact that they kind of have to build that on top of Unreal Engine 5 instead of having an engine that's kind of built around those type of interactions and those kind of like AI actions, which is something I'm hopeful for, because like I said, this game is still needs to cook some more, honestly. But even right now, the AI isn't brain dead. They're not going to let up. If they get an opportunity, they'll surround you, they'll flank you, they'll do whatever they have to do to kill you. And even when you are just doing a 1v1, you're usually going up against someone or something that is well equipped or very fast, very strong, very durable, and can take you out pretty easily, especially because they have some type of advantage that you kind of have to figure out how to play around, particularly the mutants, because that's usually why you run into the problems of being 1v1 against them, because the human enemies are dangerous, and they can be just as dangerous or even more dangerous than a lot of the mutants, but there are some you'll encounter that can really soak up some damage, or just turn invisible, or use psychic powers, and that's always going to be a bad time for you, especially if you are not well equipped at that moment. Because I was wandering around the world and I encountered some things that just fucked me up, particularly because I just wasn't ready for that fight, because maybe on the way there I had gotten into some engagements that I shouldn't have, or I just didn't prepare well enough in terms of having healing items or something to help me with radiation, or I just fucked up and I backed up into an anomaly and I got twisted up into the air, or I got blown up or set on fire or irradiated to such a degree where, okay, I'm gonna die in a few minutes, my health's just going down, or I'm bleeding out, because that's another thing to worry about. At any moment you can step into something that will kill you, or at least mess you up enough that something else could kill you in the next second, because it takes time to heal, and depending on what weapon you got, some weapons are faster or slower to switch out for something else, and you only have 2 weapon slots. Well, you have 3 considering your sidearm. And there's a nice little radial menu that you can turn off if you want. If you want to go for like a hardcore experience of this, I played it on like the Stalker difficulty. There's also veteran. I might try that out later. But right now, Stalker is just solid for me. And you can also make it harder by turning off certain menus, certain little things, certain counters, certain UI elements that can make the game a little bit more realistic for you, and probably a little bit harder if you're not thinking properly when you're playing the game. And all these elements of the game really had me excited for when they add multiplayer, because there's a lot of fun things you can do with this, especially with them wanting to add in some quality mod support. It's going to be a beautiful thing, because the Stalker series has a passionate community. People have been modding it for years, and I'm excited to see what people are going to do with this game, especially when they have multiplayer along with it. And this one, there's probably going to be some fixes. I don't know, I haven't looked up. Maybe some people already fixed some things in the game, but that's one reason I'm excited for the future of, in terms of all of that. And kind of jumping on to another thing, I know I said this game kind of has some performance issues, some bugs, but it does look nice. Genuinely, it's a beautiful game. I would say it really does a good job of setting up this whole atmosphere, of really making you feel like you're soaking in everything that the zone has to offer you. There were some moments that I kind of chilled and kind of looked at the scenery, because of course you have just the natural environment, but also you have the anomalies and all the effects that come with them, and you'll come across some areas where you're just like, man, this looks pretty nice, and you get to see a lot of it because you're going to be walking a lot of places. There is kind of fast travel. You can get a guide that you can meet at certain like safe areas that will take you to other safe areas, but you're gonna be running around a lot in this world, so you're really gonna see a lot of different things, especially if you're going hunting for anomaly, because that's when you get some really cool effects and get to see some really cool things in the world. And I know there's probably a lot of people who are happy to see the zone in this version, you know, see everything kind of brought to light, and maybe brought to life a little bit more with the expanded and upgraded visual. And that might be one benefit of Unreal Engine 5, because it does make those things a little bit easier, because it's kind of built to make things look nice. Because I think when most people think of Unreal Engine 5, they think of something that looks good, but some people might also think of something that looks good in a very generic way, you know, almost lifeless, and that's not. They took some time to make things fit for the world, you know. It doesn't look or feel generic when you're roaming through it and exploring. And I like exploring through the world, looking for interesting things happening. Sometimes you'll run across people and they'll give you quests, do different events. There's a lot of fun to it, and I enjoyed the story. I like the main character Skiff. Of course, it's not his real name. You learn his real name later on. No spoilers here from me, because this game is still relatively new and some people aren't playing it right now, because probably some people are just waiting for it to get some issues fixed. Understandable. And I don't want to ruin that for anybody. And it's only been out for what? How many days? Fuck, I don't know. I could probably look it up right now, but I'm not going to do that. But the story's good. There's plenty of choices to make. I don't know how everything plays out based on your choices, you know. This is only my first playthrough of the game. Been a lot of it dying as well. How many deaths did I have? Oh my god. It was over 60 deaths, because I would just get caught off guard by something. I find myself in just a terrible situation. Though there is some genuinely good progression to be found by going throughout the world. There's plenty of good gear to be found. You know, you can find some quests that'll give you some good stuff, and also will give you some coupons, which is the currency that will help you keep stocked up on things, especially because, you know, you got to repair your armor, you got to repair your weapons, because they'll degrade over time and even just straight up fucking break. And you gotta be wanting to repair them very often, because when weapons get into the red, it gets real expensive, especially if it's a high quality firearm and you got a bunch of upgrades on it. You're gonna be breaking the bank, and a lot of your body armor is fucking expensive, you know. For me, a lot of times throughout the game, I just didn't even fix it if it got to a point to where it was just already kind of fucked up, and I was like, okay, it's in the red. I just don't have enough money, you know, especially because, you know, I need to buy ammunition. I want to upgrade my weapons. I want to keep my weapons in good shape, because I kind of need those to kill shit. And sure, I could have a bunch of halfway broken weapons laying around in my backpack, but it's gonna weigh me down, and usually I'm not gonna be able to switch those in time when I'm actually in a combat situation, because you gotta take your book bag out and switch into a new weapon and take that out after you put your book bag back on your back. It's just going to be a problem. Probably get shot in the face or have somebody throw a grenade at you. And plus, there's always the chance that that weapon's going to jam. The lower it is in terms of its durability, better chance that weapon's going to jam up, and you're going to be in a terrible situation where the mutant's coming at you, literally jumping towards your face to claw your eyes out. You really don't want to have that issue. So repair your stuff often, very often. Oh yeah, I was talking about the story. Well, that's why I called this a Rambled review, because fuck, do I space out and go on a different tangent or something when I'm meant to be focusing on a particular topic. Story, good, enjoyable. Like the characters you meet, like different little sequences. You do feel like you're the protagonist. Skiff, pretty badass dude. I like having a good protagonist. Is he the most interesting dude on the planet? No, but he fits for the world he's in, and that's good for me. And a lot of interesting things happen throughout this game. And another thing I gotta say, I know I already kind of pointed at this, but people who are fans of the Stalker series are probably gonna enjoy this, because there's elements from the other games that are being shown here and fleshed out more, and there are things that people want to answer that are getting answered, and that's good to see. And yeah, I don't really know what else to talk about, really. There's not much, at least that I have on my mind. So I'll just say thank you for listening to me ramble for however many minutes it's been. And if you enjoyed the video, you can like it. If you didn't enjoy the video, you can dislike it. You can subscribe or unsubscribe if you're one of my few followers that I have. But yeah, it's up to you. I'm not the boss of you, but thanks for watching. Peace. I'm out.